we were expecting the hike, but the language became more hawkish.
Right.
I think if you listen to Steve, he was expecting a little more hawkish language with maybe a little more dovish behavior. The thing, I saw two things here. One, the 2 to 10 year spread, which is something we watch very closely, is now 0.4%. So the yield curve got a little bit flatter. They're raising that short end, and that 10 year is not going up as quickly. So we could see we're a little bit closer to an inversion. We have to watch that. The other thing that I see going on in markets is the NASDAQ is actually in positive territory. The Dow is down. So what the market tells me there is that the risk trade is back on, that people are still eschewing the more solid industrials here on that news and going with the NASDAQ, and the FANG stocks are probably all up and looking pretty great today.
John, you were looking for comments on inflation, on the international outlook. I think as far as that's concerned, what we heard is that the Fed is upgrading its forecast of the economy, downgrading unemployment, and overall sees growth pretty good.
Well, I think this is just the first step. You know, obviously the press conference is coming up in 25 minutes. I think that's where you'd expect those comments about the inflation outlook and the international backdrop. You know, if I could just remind you, at the last press conference, Chairman Powell said there was something like no signs of imminent higher inflation in the economic data. That was a big deal at the time. If he were to repeat something like that today, you know, I think you'd see a reaction to that. And so I think that's still to come. We'll see on the press conference. I do think the market's probably responding to that higher dot in 2018, and that seems right. You know, what I'd emphasize there is they're just kind of shifting around, and so they've shifted a hike into 2018, maybe into 19. That doesn't change the bigger picture here. It doesn't change their estimate of neutral. It doesn't change the inflation backdrop. But, you know, they're responding to a little bit of growth and shifting hikes accordingly. So a lot still to come. You know, watch that press conference very carefully. I think that's where he's going to give some nuance to this, and that's where we're going to get a sense of their real thinking on inflation and the international outlook.
Let's get quick thoughts from Lori Calvasina and Steve Grasso before we go out to Rick Santelli at the CME. Lori, your quick reaction, and then Steve, jump in.
Well, I certainly like to see the financials acting well here. And I think the statement, you know, what I heard is that the economic growth outlook still looks pretty good. They've upgraded their forecast a little bit. I think that's been a problem for the financials over the last month or so. When kind of growth fears or growth jitters seep in, financials get knocked down a peg. I really like the reaction there.
And I think to take a look at the S&P financials, that doesn't tell the whole story, because if you dig down, I mean, you got some big gains right now. Morgan Stanley is up by more than 1%. Yeah. Goldman Sachs is up by 1.5%. Right. Are we finally going to see these financials behave according to investors' bullish expectations, or will the fear of the flattening yield curve, as Michael points out, win the day?
I think when you look at these money center banks, the fear of the flattening yield curve is going to win out, and I think you have to go with the KRE, the regionals. The regionals are up. The KRE index is up 10% year to date, while the XLF is flat, so that's been dead money. We heard them speak basically hawkish, and this was already in the mix, so to speak. So I would look for the market to do the reverse, and whenever we talk about this, it's the reverse of the first knee-jerk reaction. Knee-jerk reaction was to sell off the S&P. I would look for the S&P to rally going into the close today.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.